Well, hey everyone, Nadeem from Colin Campbell Chemicals here again. Day 3 of GIS, the first day of the trade show, and I'm lucky enough to meet up with a friend of mine. I haven't known Ben for as long as some of the other guys that I've brought to you, but Ben McGraw from Penn State University. We've spoken quite a bit on Twitter, and I've been to a couple of his talks, and very entertaining. I'll just let Ben introduce himself and talk about what he does and where he's at.
Oh, thanks.
Welcome.
Thanks, Nadeem, and thanks for this introduction to Australian turf managers. I'm an associate professor at Penn State University. I'm the turfgrass entomologist there, so I deal with everything with 6 legs, and then some things that don't have 6 legs, like this week I've been dealing with some talks on earthworms. So earthworms are a big problem.
Yeah, they are. Yeah,
in many of our golf courses.
A little bit of a chat about them. And
okay.
as well, because I know some of the southern guys, the Victorian guys, have fun with them. Should I say?
Yeah. So you deal with some warm season pest issues that we have here, like ground pearls and mites. So the mites are not insects, but some of my colleagues deal with those non-6-legged things. But I deal with the earthworms and mostly turfgrass insect pest issues.
And a lot of your work has been with weevil, which you guys call the annual bluegrass weevil.
Yes.
We call it the Argentine Stem Weevil.
Yep. Totally different species, but they're think of them as like sister species. So they're both from the same genus, Listernotus, and they both behave very differently. It's interesting because we've known about what you guys call the STEMI.
STEMI, yeah, that's exactly it. He knows
the
all the lingo, see guys?
So the STEMI we've known about for a long time because of New Zealand and being a pasture pest. And then it became on my radar maybe 5 or 6 years ago that it was actually a problem in golf course turf, and more so in Australia than New Zealand, would you say?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely more in Australia.
And, talking to you about its life cycle, it seems to be almost identical how it uses the plant, how it moves in the environment. So that's kind of exciting to have something on the other side of the world that is similar. So hopefully we can learn from each other what you guys are doing in Australia.
Spraying. It is one of those things, going a lot of spraying for it, because it is becoming, it's a lot of guys are finding it as a numbers game, that they're not knocking down the population 100%, never do, but if they can knock it down enough and get away with 2-3 week intervals, 3 week intervals are great, especially in the peak season of it, because we are getting 3-4 generations, and now I'm seeing the stem weevil more so in Melbourne than ever before. It's always been a bit of an issue, but now it's people more talking about it. That's that's one of the ways to do it. So what do you guys do here? Is it culturally? Can you manage it, the bluegrass weevil, or is it more?
I wish we could. I mean, a lot of my research is involving cultural and biological control, so alternatives to insecticides, but it is heavily managed with insecticides, and I think if anything, we had to get to a really bad place to really examine what we were doing wrong, and that was spraying too much. So if you're talking 3 weeks intervals, I need to get over to Australia, and we need to tighten that up, because I think what we do see is, going with a pest that has multiple generations per year, going maybe hard against that first generation really pays dividends down the road. And so what we try to do, and like if a top club comes in and asks me to consult with them, usually what ends up happening is we end up spraying less, but timing it better. So really with any pest, you got to know its seasonal development and its behavior. So I'd say if anything that's working for us well is spraying less.
Okay.
But we've had some good products come to market, and it sounds like you have similar things. And I think
we do have.
You have some parts of the world that we go to, whether it's a state within the United States that has hard regulation, or going to Canada, which is quite a bit fewer products that they have available. Those are challenges that we deal with. So we're always looking to make our products work better, and how they work better is by doing things culturally.
Yeah. No, very true. And what about saying trying to spray less, but you're also seeing resistance-wise coming to the mode of actions. I spoke to yesterday, whether the audience is watching or not, but when I spoke to Jim Brosnan, I was talking about herbicide resistance and the likes, and obviously fungicide resistance is documented, but we haven't, I guess, spoken about that too much in Australia. We do mix up our groups, but you guys have had good documented resistance.
Yeah, so we really, I mean, I think a lot of the good things that have come out of annual bluegrass weevil management has been from bad things, which is people spraying every 2 weeks with a pyrethroid.
Yeah.
Pyrethroids were really effective from the mid-90s to the mid-2000s, and then we started to see resistance, so people were applying. Every time a tank went out, people would throw some pyrethroid in there, and that's never a good situation. With insects, they don't have as many generations per year as something like a fungi that is going to produce a lot of spores, and so the pressure is a little less. However, it might be 10 or 12 years down the road of intensive spraying, and intensive meaning all areas of the course rather than select areas, and high rates and close frequencies. So because these products were cheap, what we see is really interesting. It's not the big budget golf course, it's all golf courses, the mom and pop, as we like to call it, the low budget golf courses that have issues as well. The really scary thing that we see with annual bluegrass weevil pyrethroid resistance is where you get to high level in some of these populations. Now they're tolerant to non-related chemistries.
Oh.
So Nadeem at Campbell Chemicals invents something in his backyard that this population that's resistant has never seen before, never been applied against it. You apply it against that, their enzyme system is so ramped up that they just chew through that as well.
Oh, wow.
So you've really created this super pest by this intense amount of spraying.
Wow.
So something that we want to avoid. We don't have many options for controlling the adults, and so most people would go after the adults to reduce egg laying. So if you have 2 classes, you can only rotate between those 2, and if you have resistance to one of those, then you have one that you're intensely applying. So that's a challenge, and it takes a long time for products to come to market in the U.S. So I don't expect there to be answers or solutions to the adults anytime soon.
So that, because we haven't probably had as long history of the pyrethroids as exclusive. We have always mixed it up, but we've still got the organophosphates. I know it's like a lot of it's a bad word, but it's still there.
Yep.
We've still got them. Are they used here still at all?
They are. So we have a couple of organophosphates that we can use against the adults. They have a little bit more environmental baggage than pyrethroids for sure. And in some locales within the United States, there are certain states like New York that are looking to ban chlorpyrifos, which is one of our main products that you would use, especially if you had a pyrethroid-resistant population. You would be using chlorpyrifos. So.
Okay. Are you seeing resistance to more than the pyrethroid? Like you're saying, it's like there's some, if something new may be resistant, but the existing chemistries, is it just pyrethroid resistance, or are you seeing it to the other products, or like a
so with the pyrethroid resistance, what we believe in most populations that have this developed. Now it could be different for different populations because, like the STEMI, it's not flying to huge distances. It's not traveling unless we're taking it with us to Tasmania. It's like these populations are moving mainly through walking, so there's not a lot of genetic mixing, which is good and bad depending on what the situation is. In most populations where they have documented pyrethroid resistance, it's like a non-specific mode of resistance. It's more like increasing their appetite for other things, so they're able to be more tolerant to these other things. So other than pyrethroid resistance, it's hard to determine if other chemicals are becoming resistant. I don't think it is the case, especially when you look at these other products are not as inexpensive as a pyrethroid. And so that's really, I think, a large part of the story of resistance is these products were really cheap, and so people would put them out often. We have some great products that work even well against our resistant population, but that might be $300 per acre, so 250 Australian per acre.
Oh, that'd be about 500. 500.
Oh,
500. Which actually is not too. That's actually not too bad in terms of price. Because I know some guys there's some products that are about $800-900.
Wow.
That's a 500. No, about the same, because we're talking about acres, not because 18 grains.
Right.
Yeah, so actually that's about on par in terms of pricing.
Okay. So you know, other than making Nadeem really rich,
that would be nice.
I
I need to I want to fund a trip for Ben to come over to Australia.
Absolutely. Let's pass the hat. But you know, it promotes responsible use. I think if you have not that I'm saying all pesticides need to be really expensive. However, if you have something like that, you're probably going to put a lot of thought into the application, the delivery of that product. You know, is the weather questionable? Is it really right? Am I just being nervous and this is the first? Because I believe they move in a wave, much like our weevil does. Like, that was the big problem that I saw when I was a young scientist. Like, people going out early and often because they were afraid of turf loss, and just hold on, wait for them.
That's realistically. So essentially, keep on monitoring, do the flushes, see them come up. When you start, I guess, measure a threshold to when you get so many come up going. If you're starting to see damage, spray there or start to sort of time a little bit beforehand if you don't obviously want to see any damage.
You know, and we've talked about this theoretical Australia trip. I mean, I think there are many things that you need to know. And you really need to have somebody who's dedicated to taking a lot of data. And once you have those data, then you can make informed decisions. So that's true of anything on the golf course.
And one other thing I'll touch on as well is the bee, the bee talk. It's more prevalent here. A lot of guys on the social media who be watching this we always see something about the bee side of things. How is that impacting on turf in the States? Have you seen an impact?
Yeah, so in this country, I'll just back up. In 2013, there was a large bee kill in a very environmentally sensitive part of the U.S., and it was a it was just everything about it was wrong. It was a bad application to a flowering tree by a landscape company. Somehow turf got lumped into that because you know, the neonicotinoids are a very popular white grub problem, so that's what unites us across the globe is everybody has white grub issues, and because of that, you know, certain groups started looking at who's using these products, and agriculture's feeling a lot of heat about using neonics. Turf, the same thing. The risk to bees is minimal, in my opinion, based on how we apply these things. We apply them with a lot of water, so as long as that residue doesn't dry on the turf, it's a non-issue. However, that's not the problem in the U.S. That, you know, there are many areas in the U.S. where they're looking to ban these products because of their high toxicity to bees. Other than that, once they're in the plant, they're not. They don't really pose a problem. So I give a bee seminar here. I'm a beekeeper myself. I raise bees and want bees to do well. This industry in the U.S. has really embraced this as an issue where we're looking at leveraging the large amount of acreage that we have on our properties to make bee habitats, pollinator habitats, but also a lot of people are interested in keeping hives.
Okay.
And so our seminars are usually well attended about that. People want to know what it takes, and it is a science unto its own, but it's a very rewarding hobby. And you've got some pretty healthy bees in Australia.
Yes, we do.
See.
No, we do definitely, and there are some years where it's not as much as others. And I know with the orchard side, it's like the more bees, the better it is. And sometimes they are starting. Well, they have been a long time, but we are seeing more bringing in bees. But the other side, we're getting also more residential areas closer to the farming community. So that's taken a lot away as well. I don't know. I think I even remember seeing that when I did a trip up to Northwest, up to Washington State, where see an orchard and they're going, there's more and more houses getting built here, and the person I was with going, that used to be all orchard, but the land was more valuable for housing.
Yeah, and you know, that brings up a really good point, is like, I think our global pollinator, not just bees, but pollinator populations are declining, and there are a lot of people who are looking at these correlations between insecticide use, like ours, and turf, and saying that, look, this is rising at the time where bees are falling. However, you can't discredit the global expansion of populations or the outward flow from cities. Like, you're fragmenting up these landscapes where these insects are naturally moving, and that's going to have a major impact on their populations for sure, just as much as insecticides might.
All right, Ben, I think we'll wrap it up there. It's like I appreciate the time.
Yeah,
I
no
know
problem,
you've
man.
got it, so thank you very much.
Yeah, I hope to see everybody on the other side of the world.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to try to get Ben out one day. It's like I know that a lot of guys have met his counterpart, John Kaminsky, who's, as you said, across the road.
That's right. He's right
across the road. So, yeah, so I'll try to get Ben out. But what's your Twitter handle, just in case the guys want to get in touch with you?
It's at Turfento, so TURFENTO.
Yeah, so I'll put that in the notes as well on YouTube, and when I upload this to iTunes and everything else later on.
Sounds good,
Facebook. But
thanks,
thank you, Ben.
Thanks for having
you.
me on. Awesome.